Hello, my name is Vasudevan. Today we're going to talk about the management of transaction exposure. So in this case, what we are saying is that when companies do business abroad, so that could be a Microsoft, selling their software all over the world, or an Apple selling their products, such as the iPad, the iPod, and so on, all over the world, or a Walmart importing products from outside, or that could be a Toyota bringing their cars from Japan, and so on. So all of these companies are exposed to exchange rate risk. And in this case, what we are trying to talk about is that how you can manage their exposure. So basically here, we are looking at each transaction and how companies can try to bring down their exchange rate exposure. Now, what are the different choices that a company has? As far as we are concerned, we are talking about three ways you can hedge. So hedging basically means that how you can bring down your exposure to currency risk. The first one is the forward market hedge. The second one is the money market hedge. And the third one is the options market hedge. So these are the three different ways you can hedge your exposure. So we want to talk about each one of them. Okay. So the first one is the forward market hedge. So we already talked about forward contracts and futures contracts in chapter 5. Here we are trying to apply that for transactions. So what is the basic story here, or what is the bottom line here? So if you are going to owe foreign currency in the future, agree to buy the future foreign currency now by entering into a long position in a forward contract. So basically here, what we are saying is that if you owe money, okay, you need foreign currency. And how can you meet that need? You can meet the need by going long on the forward contract. On the other hand, if you are receiving money from abroad, so let's say you are an Apple or a Microsoft, you have a lot of foreign currency transactions and you are receiving foreign currency from different countries. So basically your objective is you want to convert it into US dollars. And how can you do that? You can agree to sell the foreign currency now by entering into a short position in a forward contract. So basically you are selling the forward contracts, or you have a short position in a forward contract. Okay. So let's look at the different types of hedges. So you are a US importer of Italian shoes and have just ordered next year's inventory. Payment of 100 million euros is due in 1 year. How can you fix the cash outflow in dollars? So essentially what we are saying is that we have to make a payment of 100 million euros and you are trying to avoid or at least bring down the foreign currency risk. So how do you do that? You can enter into a long forward contract on the euro. So what is the choice here? If you did not do anything, if you just said, come what may happen, I will go and buy the euro, what's going to happen is that initially, let's say the exchange rate was 1.2. At 1.2, he would have owed 100 million euros, that would be 120 million. Now, as the exchange rate goes up, he has to pay more and more money. So let's say the exchange rate is 1.8, he has to pay 180 million US dollars. So that is going to cost him a lot of money. So if you are unhedged, what we are saying is that you can either draw a line like this showing that it's going to be, as the exchange rate goes up, you're going to pay more, or this basically looks at the profit and so on. But I think it's easier to just look at the cost. And if you look at the cost, you owe 100 million euros, okay? So the exchange rate is 1.2. Your cost is 120 million. If it goes to 1.5, your cost is 150 million, and so on. Okay. Now, suppose if we agree to buy 100 million euros at a price of 1.5, what is going to happen? So if he is agreeing to do that, what you find here is that regardless of the exchange rate, he always makes the same payment of 100 million times 1.5 or 150 million euros. So the main thing here is that in the case of a forward market hedge, your cost does not change. So it may not be good all the time. So for example, if the exchange rate goes to 1.8, other people have to pay 180 million, you pay 150. But if the exchange rate goes down to 1.2, other people only pay 120 million, you have to pay 150 million. So there, that is the good side and the bad side of the forward market or the futures. And what we find here is that in the case of the futures contract or the forward contract, you have the right, but you also have an obligation. So what that means is that sometimes things might not work in your favor, and in this case, you might still end up paying a very high price. So that is the bad part of the forward market or the futures market. Now we want to look at the second type of hedge. Okay? So that is the money market hedge. So the money market hedge has several steps. If you follow the steps, it becomes pretty straightforward. So what do we do here? To hedge a foreign currency payable, buy the present value of the currency today and sit on it. So what are the steps here? Suppose you owe, let's say the same, let's look at this example. A US-based importer of Italian bicycles in 1 year owes 100 million euros to an Italian supplier. The spot exchange rate is $1.5 is equal to 1 euro. The 1 year interest rate is IE is equal to 4%. So what do we have here? You have to make a payment of 100,000 euros in 1 year. So in the case of a money market hedge, what we do here is that we want to figure out how much money we need today so that we can have the 100,000 euros. And how much do we need here? The interest rate in Italy is 4%. So what we need to have is the present value of the payment. So 100,000 euros is the payment. The present value would be the 100,000 divided by 1.04. That gives you $96,153.85. So that is how much you need. And if you need $96,153.85, what is the cost today in US dollars? That is going to be the $96,153.85 times today's exchange rate, which is 1.5. So the cost is going to be $144,230.77. Okay, so that tells you the cost of making the payment. So the steps are very clear. Find the present value of the payment in foreign currency, that is the 100,000 divided by 1.04, and then find the cost at today's exchange rate. And that gives you the cost today. Sometimes the question might say, what is the future value dollar cost? So in that case, if you are given the interest rate in the US, you want to multiply this 144,230 times 1 plus the US interest rate. Okay. So the US interest rate is 3%. The cost is going to be 144,230 times 1.03. That gives you 148,557. Okay. So this basically tells you steps. Find the present value of payment owed in foreign currency and then find the cost in US dollars. Now, the last type of hedge we want to talk about is the options market hedge. And what is the options market hedge? So we can either use call options or we can use put options. And if it's a foreign currency payable, so if you are buying something from abroad, you have to make a payment, then the risk you face is what happens if the currency goes up in value. So if the currency appreciates, your call option lets you buy the currency at the strike price of the call. So basically, you might save money because you can buy the currency at the strike price. To hedge a foreign currency receivable, buy put options on the currency. If the currency depreciates, your put option lets you sell the currency for the exercise price. So basically, these are the two things. If it's an accounts payable, you have to make a payment. You want to buy call options. If it's an accounts receivable, you are receiving money from abroad. The risk you face is what happens if the US dollar appreciates. In that case, a put option can protect you. Okay? So let's look at this example. If an importer who owes 100 million, okay, so he or she has to make a payment of 100 million, and how can she or he use call options? So suppose our importer buys a call option on 100 million euros with an exercise price of 150, he pays 0.05 per euro for the call. And what we said was, if you just look at the one call itself, okay, what we find here is that you are paying 5 cents per euro, and for 100 million euros, your cost is going to be 5 million. So 100 times 5 by 100, that gives you the 5 million. So what is going to be your maximum cost? So what can happen is that if the exchange rate goes above 1.5, you can exercise the call and you can buy the British pound at 150. So the most you will end up paying is 1.55 US dollars for 1 euro. Now what happens if the exchange rate is 1.3? If the exchange rate is 1.3, you will not exercise the call. And what is going to be your total cost? Your total cost is going to be the 1.3 in the market plus the 5 cents you paid for the call. So that's going to be 135. Okay. So this summarizes the options market hedge. Importers who owe foreign currency in the future should buy call options, and if the price of the currency goes up, his call will lock in an upper limit on the dollar cost of his imports. If the price of the currency goes down, he will have the option to buy the foreign currency at a lower price. And if you are an exporter, so you are Microsoft or Apple, exporters with accounts receivable denominated in foreign currency should buy put options, and if the price of the currency goes down, puts will lock in a lower limit on the dollar value of his exports, and if the price of the currency goes up, he will have the option to sell the foreign currency at a higher price. So these are the two cases. So we talked about call options. We want to look at another example where we are talking about put options. Show the portfolio payoff of an exporter who is owed 1 million in 1 year. So the current 1 year forward rate is $1 equals, 1 pound is equal to $2. And instead of entering into a short forward contract, he buys a put option written on 1 million with a maturity of 1 year and a strike price of 1 pound is equal to $2. And the cost of this option is 0.05 per pound. Okay, so basically here you are using put options, and with the put options you have the right to convert the British pound into US dollars, and the strike price is $1 pound is equal to $2. So basically he has the right to convert the British pounds into US dollars at an exchange rate of 1 pound is equal to $2. So what is his strategy? His strategy is that if the exchange rate is above 2, he will not exercise the contract, the put option. If the exchange rate is below 2, he will exercise the put option. So these are the two cases. So let's look at some cases. What happens if 1 British pound is equal to 2.1 US dollars? Okay. So in this case, will not exercise the put. Okay. So what's going to happen is that he will not exercise the put, and receipts are the 2.1 times the 1 million, okay, minus the price of the put. So that's what you have to do here to find out the total cost. And here the cost is 5 cents per pound. So the cost is 5 cents per pound. So for 1 million pounds, okay, so that's going to be 1 million times 5 by 100. Okay. So that's going to be 2,100,000 minus the price of the option. Okay, so that gives you how much he has to I think it's $50,000, yeah. So that gives you his receipts. Now what happens if the exchange rate is so in this case, exercise the put. Okay. That's what he will do. He will exercise the put, and the receipts are going to be he gets 1 million times 2 minus the option premium. Okay. So essentially what we are saying is that at a minimum he will get the 2 million conversion value minus what he pays for the option. Okay, so that would be, I think, $1,950,000 US dollars. So that is the minimum amount he gets. So what we saw here is that we looked at three ways you can hedge your exports. Okay, the first is you can use a forward contract. The second is we talked about a money market hedge, and the third is we talked about the options contracts. So show the portfolio payoff of an importer who owes 1 million in 1 year. The current 1 year forward rate is 1 pound is equal to 1.8 US dollars. But instead of buying a long forward contract, he buys a call option written on 1 million with an exercise of 1.8 and an expiration of 1 year. The cost of this option is 8 cents per pound. Okay. So if you look at this question, I think they give you a lot of numbers that perhaps make it a little more confusing than it should be. So let's look at a simpler way to do that. Okay. So basically here you owe 1 million pounds, and the current price is 1 pound is equal to 1.8 US dollars. And by buying this with a strike price of 1.8, basically what is going to happen is that if exchange rate is higher than 1.8, okay, you want to exercise the call, and what you get is the 1.8 you can buy. So it's costing you 1,800,000 plus the call price. Okay, if exchange rate is lower than 1.8, so let's say it's 1.6, okay, cost is going to be 1.6 times 1 million, okay, plus the call price. Okay, so what we find here is that whenever the exchange rate is higher than 1.8, he is going to exercise the call because he can buy the currency at a cheaper price. What is his overall cost? That is going to be the price at which he converts, which is the 1.8 plus the call price or the call premium. And here the call premium is 8 cents per pound. So for 1 million, you just want to multiply it by 1 million times 0.08. Okay, so I think that gives you $80,000. And if the exchange rate is lower than 1.8, so for example 1.6, he basically will not exercise the call. He walks away, he goes to the market and buys the currency, and his cost is going to be 1.6 million plus the call price. Okay, now what is perhaps a simpler strategy? That is hedging through invoice currency. So what does it mean? So let's say you are Apple, you are selling your products all over the world. Let's say you sell it in the UK and you sell it in Europe. The risk you face is, as the US dollar appreciates against the British pound or the US or the euro, you receive less money. So how can you protect yourself? One way to protect is by saying that Apple wants to get paid in US dollars. So that way they don't have to worry about exchange rate risk. So by invoicing foreign sales in US dollars or the home currency, or they can also say that they can share the exchange rate risk. And how do you share the exchange rate risk? By prorating the currency of the invoice between foreign and home currencies. So we can say 50-50. So 50% of the money is paid in US dollars and 50% is paid in euros. So that way they are basically sharing the risk. And the last one is by diversifying the exchange rate risk. So these are the choices. The next one is hedging via lead and lag. So if a currency is appreciating, pay those bills denominated in the currency early and let customers in that country pay late as long as they are paying in that currency. So let's say you expect the euro to appreciate, and if you have to make a payment, you don't want to wait for the currency to go up. You want to make the payment as quickly as possible. On the other hand, if you expect money from people to come in, let's say customers in UK have to pay you, you might give them some time, or you might give them more time, because that's going to help you. Okay. If a currency is depreciating, give incentives to customers who owe you in that currency to pay early, pay your obligations denominated in that currency as late as your contracts will allow. Okay, so these are the choices. Now, people always ask this question, should the firm hedge? And what we are saying is that not everyone agrees that a firm should hedge. And what are some of the reasons why firms should not hedge? Hedging by the firm may not add to shareholder wealth if the shareholders can manage exposure themselves, and hedging may not reduce the non-diversified risk of the firm. Therefore, shareholders who hold a diversified portfolio are not helped when management hedges. So basically here, what we are saying is that we are always assuming that shareholders hold diversified portfolios. So if you are holding a diversified portfolio, then it doesn't matter whether one firm has a loss or not, especially in foreign currency. So you might be holding shares of Apple. So Apple is going to make money if the US dollar depreciates. You might also be holding shares of Walmart, and Walmart will actually help Walmart if the US dollar appreciates. So all said and done, what we are saying is that some of the firms might make money as exchange rate goes up, some of the firms might lose money as the exchange rate goes up, and these might cancel out, and as an investor, it really doesn't matter to you whether the firm hedges or not. But by hedging, it is costing the firm quite a bit of money. So they have to buy futures contracts, or they have to buy options contracts and so on, and these are not cheap. So that is the reason why we are saying that it may not actually help the shareholders if the firm hedges. Now, in spite of this, why do you think the firm hedges? Some of the reasons are default costs. Hedging may reduce the firm's cost of capital. The other one is differential transactions cost. The firm may be able to hedge at better prices than the shareholders. And the last one is information asymmetry. The managers may have better information than the shareholders. Now, these are three reasons that people say, but there could be another reason, and that is usually the managers of the firm, some of the people who are at the top of the firm, they have a lot of money invested within the firm. So, for example, if you look at Apple, the CEO, Tim Cook, has more than $500 million worth of shares in Apple. So for him, most of his money is with Apple, and he does not really want Apple to take too much risk. So that is perhaps one of the reasons why we find that firms hedge, although it may not be in the best interest of shareholders. Okay. Now, should the firm hedge? Taxes can be a large market imperfection. So corporations that face progressive tax rate may find that they pay less in taxes if they can manage earnings by hedging than if they have boom and bust cycles. So what we find is that most of the time firms like to smooth their earnings. They don't want earnings to go up and down every quarter or every year. They prefer a steady growth or even a steady state of earnings. And by hedging, they might be able to do that better. Now, how about the practice of risk management products? Most US firms meet their exchange rate risk management with forward, swap, and options contracts. So all these contracts are very popular. We talked about forward contracts, we've talked about futures contracts, and we talked about the options contracts. The greater the degree of international involvement, the greater the firm's use of foreign exchange rate risk management. So basically what we find is that firms that have more transactions, so a Microsoft or an Apple, might do more of currency risk management simply because they have more exposure to different currencies.